Admiral William Carter sat in the dimly lit conference room aboard the U.S. Valiant, the last human vessel within Galactic Council space. He rolled his shoulders to ease the tension that had built up during the latest round of talks. The blue light from the holographic displays cast shadows across the tired faces of the human delegation. 3 months of negotiations had led nowhere. Ambassador Diane Ellis tapped her stylus against the datapad in front of her. The latest proposal from the Celtari ambassador glowed on the screen. It demanded human disarmament while offering no protection guarantees. It was worse than insulting. It was dangerous. "They think we're desperate," Ellis whispered to Carter. "They believe we have no choice but to accept." Carter nodded slightly. "And what do you think, Ambassador?" "I think we've reached the end of diplomacy," she replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "We've made 17 different proposals. They've rejected everyone." The alien delegates across the table continued their discussions in various languages, their translation devices creating a low hum of background noise. The Celtari ambassador, with his silver skin and 4 arms, gestured emphatically as he spoke to a representative from the Ardani Confederation. "They're already dividing our territories," Carter observed. "Yes," Ellis agreed. "They'd been doing that since day one." Lieutenant Frank Miller approached with a secure data tablet. "Sir, the latest intelligence from home. Earth Command has completed preparations for Operation Homeward." Carter reviewed the information and passed the tablet to Ellis. Her eyes widened slightly. Then her expression settled into calm resolve. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. The decision they had been contemplating for weeks was finally made. Carter stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the alien conversations, bringing immediate silence to the room. All eyes turned to the human admiral, some curious, others wary. "Distinguished delegates of the Galactic Council," Carter began, his voice firm and clear. "For 3 months, we have negotiated in good faith. We have offered compromises. We have shown patience." The Celtari ambassador's facial ridges flattened in what the humans had learned was an expression of irritation. "Admiral Carter, if your delegation requires more time to consider our generous terms." "We don't need more time," Carter interrupted. "We need fair treatment. We need recognition of human sovereignty. We need mutual respect." Ellis rose to stand beside him. "The United Earth Federation is officially withdrawing from these peace negotiations. We will be returning to human space immediately." The chamber erupted in alien voices. The Medusan representative's tentacles writhed in agitation. The Taurian military advisor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. The Celtari ambassador slammed one of his 4 hands on the table. "This is outrageous. You cannot simply leave." "Watch us," Carter replied simply. Ellis gathered her materials with calm efficiency. "Our diplomatic vessel will detach from your station within the hour. We expect safe passage back to our ship." The human delegation began filing out of the room. Security Officer Olivia Murphy took position by the door, her hand resting casually near her sidearm. The aliens made no move to stop them. "This decision will have consequences," the Celtari ambassador called after them. Carter paused at the doorway and turned back. "Yes, it will. But not just for us." As the doors closed behind them, stunned silence fell over the alien delegates. In the corridor, Ellis matched stride with Carter as they headed for the docking bay. "They think we're bluffing," she said quietly. "They think we're weak," Carter corrected. "A minor power they can bully and exploit. How long until they realize their mistake?" Carter's expression remained grim as they reached the airlock where their shuttle waited. "I give it a week before the economic impacts hit. A month before their entire system starts to crumble. And then they'll come crawling back to the negotiating table," Carter said. "But next time, we'll be the ones setting the terms." The human delegation boarded their shuttle, leaving behind a council that had gravely miscalculated. The age of human submission was over. The age of human strength was about to begin. Lieutenant Olivia Murphy stood at her station on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant. Her fingers moved quickly across the defense grid controls as the massive warship slowly disengaged from the Galactic Council's orbital station. The blue glow of the station's docking lights faded as they pulled away. "Defense grid at full power," Murphy reported. "No weapons locked on us yet." Captain Jason Monroe nodded from the command chair. His face showed no emotion, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the armrests. "Keep us at ready status until we clear the system." Behind them, the diplomatic shuttle carrying Ambassador Ellis and her team approached the Valiant's docking bay. The small craft looked tiny against the vast blackness of space. "Shuttle requesting permission to dock," said Communications Officer Ryan Peters. "Granted," Monroe replied. "Alert me when the Ambassador is aboard." Murphy watched the sensor displays carefully. Dozens of alien ships moved through the busy space around the Council station, but none changed course to intercept the Valiant. Either they were giving the humans a small courtesy, or they were simply stunned by the sudden withdrawal. "Sir," Peters called out, "we're receiving multiple hails from the Council. They're demanding we return to negotiations." Monroe's expression hardened. No response. "Are all our people accounted for?" "Yes, sir," Peters confirmed. The shuttle was the last. "All human personnel are now aboard." First Officer Ben Collins approached the captain's chair with a datapad. "Ambassador Ellis reports her team is secure. Operation Homeward is ready to proceed on your command." Monroe took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change humanity's place in the galaxy. There would be no going back. "Set course for the jump point," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The great engines of the Valiant hummed louder as the ship accelerated away from the Council station. On the main view screen, the alien structure grew smaller. "Captain," Peters said with surprise in his voice, "I'm monitoring Council frequencies. There's total silence about our departure on their official channels." "They think we're bluffing," Murphy observed from her station. "They'll realize soon enough we weren't." The Valiant continued to accelerate, pushing deeper into space. 20 minutes later, they approached the system's jump point, the location where their faster-than-light drives could safely activate. "Jump point in 2 minutes," Navigation Officer Steve Grant announced. Monroe stood up from his chair. "Send the coded message to Fleet Command. Tell them Operation Homeward begins now." Peters nodded and sent the transmission. The signal would reach Earth in hours, triggering the coordinated withdrawal of all human assets from Council space. "Message sent, sir." "Any response from the Council ships?" Monroe asked. Murphy checked her displays again. "No, sir. They're just watching us go." Monroe walked to the front of the bridge and stared at the view screen. The jump point lay ahead, a region of space that looked like any other, but would be their gateway home. "They've grown too dependent on us," he said quietly. "They don't even realize it yet." "Jump point in 30 seconds," Grant called out. Ambassador Ellis entered the bridge, still wearing her formal diplomatic attire. Her face showed the strain of months of failed negotiations, but her eyes were clear and determined. "Captain," she acknowledged Monroe with a nod. "Has the Council made any moves to stop us?" "None," Monroe replied. "They still think this is a negotiating tactic." Ellis smiled slightly. "By the time they realize it isn't, their economies will already be feeling the effects." "Jump point in 5 seconds," Grant announced. 4, 3, 2, 1. The stars on the view screen stretched into lines of light as the Valiant entered faster-than-light travel. The Council system vanished behind them. "Send word to all departments," Monroe ordered. "We're heading home." Throughout Council space, the quiet departure had begun. Human ships everywhere received their coded orders and began preparations to leave. Like a tide going out, the human presence across the galaxy started its retreat, leaving emptiness where once there had been trade, science, and cooperation. The Council would soon learn what that emptiness meant. High Counselor Zeth Toril of the Ardani Confederation called the emergency session to order. His long, slender fingers pressed the ceremonial chime that had opened Council meetings for over 300 years. The sound echoed through the grand chamber, but did little to quiet the heated discussions. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations filled the room. Their voices rose in argument, creating a storm of noise that the chamber's acoustics were never designed to handle. "Order," Zeth Toril called out, his voice amplified by the speaker system. "The council will come to order." Gradually, the noise died down. The delegates returned to their seats, though many continued to whisper urgently to their aides. "We are here to address the human withdrawal from negotiations," Zeth Toril began. "It has been 3 days since their delegation departed. We must decide on our response." Delegate Voskir of the Medusan hierarchy rose from his seat. His tentacles waved in agitation as he spoke. "The humans cannot simply withdraw," he insisted. "Their worlds hold critical resources our economies depend upon. We must send a fleet to bring them back to the table." Several delegates shouted their agreement. Others looked uncertain. "A fleet?" asked the representative from the Solari Union. "Is that wise? The humans have been peaceful trading partners for decades." "They are primitive," Voskir replied dismissively. "Their ships are no match for our combined forces." From the military section of the chamber, a gruff voice cut through the debate. "Perhaps we should consider that our demands were excessive." The chamber fell silent. Military Advisor Krell, a grizzled Taurian with battle scars across his thick hide, rarely spoke during political discussions. When he did, even his enemies listened. The Taurians were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They rarely contradicted the council majority. "Excessive," the Celtari ambassador hissed the word. "We offered them protection in exchange for total disarmament," Krell pointed out. "No species would accept such terms." The Celtari ambassador rose from his seat, his forearms gesturing in frustration. "Their weapons are inferior. Their ships are primitive. They should be grateful for our protection." Krell's 4 eyes blinked slowly. He looked around the chamber before responding. "Our intelligence suggests human military capacity was greatly underestimated," he said carefully. "Without their cooperation, enforcing our will may prove costly." "Costly." The Celtari ambassador's voice dripped with contempt. "How many ships do they have compared to our combined fleets?" 100, 200. "Numbers do not tell the whole story," Krell replied. "They have been developing their technology rapidly." "Then why?" the Celtari ambassador asked with a smirk. "Did your fleet commander refuse to engage when the Valiant departed?" The chamber went completely silent. Everyone turned to look at Krell. The Taurian military advisor stood up slowly. His massive frame towered over the other delegates. "Because," he said quietly, "my fleet commander reported unusual energy readings from the Valiant. Readings that suggested weapons capabilities far beyond what we believed the humans possessed." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zeth Toril raised his hand for silence. "Are you suggesting the humans have been hiding their true military strength?" he asked. "I am suggesting," Krell replied, "that we know less about the humans than we thought." The economic advisor, a small Bolian with bright blue skin, spoke up from his seat. "It's not just military concerns we face. 3 human mining operations in the Centauri sector shut down yesterday. The raw materials markets are already showing significant price increases. They'll be back," the Celtari ambassador insisted. "They need our markets more than we need their resources." The Bolian shook his head. "Our analysis suggests otherwise. 15% of critical shipbuilding materials come from human space, 30% of medical compound elements, and over 40% of rare earth metals used in communication technology." Zeth Toril looked around the chamber gravely. "How long before these shortages affect our economies?" "They already are," the Bolian replied. "The galactic credit dropped 8% against the Earth credit today. If this continues—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The chamber erupted in worried conversations. Zeth Toril struck the chime again for order. "Perhaps," he suggested carefully, "we should reconsider our position in the negotiations." The Celtari ambassador glared at him. You would appease these humans. Show weakness. I would prevent an economic crisis, Zeth Toril replied firmly. And avoid a potential military confrontation. We might not win. The first cracks in the Council's united front against humanity had begun to show. Merchant Captain Samantha Wright directed her crew to finish loading cargo at the Proxima Centauri outpost. The busy spaceport buzzed with activity as human workers moved quickly and efficiently. Cargo lifters hummed across the loading bays. Storage containers were sealed and secured in the hold of her ship, the Horizon Runner. All around them, similar scenes unfolded as human ships prepared for departure. There was urgency in the air, but no panic. Everyone followed the protocols they had practiced many times before. 30 minutes until we break orbit, Samantha announced over the ship's communication system. Her voice echoed through the corridors and cargo bays. Finish loading and prepare for departure. Her first officer, Eric Bennett, approached with a data tablet. His normally cheerful face was serious. We've received the coded transmission, he said quietly. All human vessels are withdrawing from Council space. Wright nodded, unsurprised. She had been expecting this order since talks began to break down months ago. And the border stations? She asked. Bennett's expression turned grim, going dark as we speak. Wright glanced around the busy spaceport. Several alien merchants watched the human activity with confusion. They had no idea what was happening. What about our trade contracts with the Bullions? She asked. Suspended, along with all other agreements, Bennett replied. Earth Command was clear. We leave nothing behind that could be used as leverage. Wright sighed. She had spent years building relationships with traders throughout this sector. Years of work, gone in an instant. But she understood the necessity. Tell the crew they have 20 minutes to wrap up any personal business. Then we seal the ship. Bennett nodded and moved away to relay the orders. Wright walked to the viewport and looked out at the alien section of the spaceport. It would be strange not to see these worlds again, perhaps for years. On the other side of the spaceport, an alien delegation approached the human administrative offices. They were led by a Medusan trader named Faclor, who had done business with Wright for over 5 years. Captain, Bennett called from behind her. The Port Authority is asking why all human ships are requesting departure clearance simultaneously. Tell them routine fleet exercises, Wright replied. That's the official line. Throughout Council space, the same scene played out. Human merchants abruptly ceased trade negotiations. Scientific missions recalled their personnel. Mining operations shut down with barely any notice. Communication relays went silent one by one. In the Rigel system, Dr. Alan Peterson supervised the evacuation of the human research facility. 30 years of scientific cooperation ended as his team packed up equipment and samples. Leave nothing important behind, he reminded his staff. If it can't be moved, it must be wiped. His assistant, Karen Mills, approached with concern on her face. The Ardani science team is asking to speak with you. They want to know why we're leaving. Peterson shook his head. Tell them it's temporary. A recalibration of instruments. That's a lie, Mills said quietly. It's what Earth Command ordered us to say. Peterson replied. The truth comes later. The human presence, once woven throughout Council civilization, unraveled with alarming speed and coordination. Like a tide going out, humanity retreated from alien shores. On the border world of New Eden, Colonial Governor Paul Jackson watched the last civilian transport depart for Earth space. The once busy human settlement stood empty behind him. Only his security team remained. Sir, his aide reported, the Council representatives are demanding an explanation. They're threatening to involve their military. Jackson nodded. Let them. By the time they decide what to do, we'll be gone. He turned to his security chief. Activate the final protocol. Throughout the colony, lights dimmed as power systems shut down. Defense shields collapsed. Communication arrays went silent. By the time Council forces arrived, they would find only empty buildings, no technology to salvage. No humans to question. The silence spread across the galaxy like a wave. Every hour, another human outpost went dark. Another ship disappeared from Council tracking systems. Another trade agreement collapsed. And still, the Council failed to grasp the true scale of what was happening. CEO Gregory Allen of the Martian Mining Consortium sat in his office overlooking the vast Martian landscape. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the massive mining operations that had made Mars the industrial heart of human space. Massive excavators moved across the red surface, gathering resources that once fueled both human and alien economies. Allen reviewed the latest market projections on his computer screen with growing satisfaction. The holographic displays tracked commodity prices across human space, all showing sharp upward trends. His financial advisor, Patricia Rodriguez, entered the office with a fresh data tablet. Iridium prices have tripled since yesterday, she reported, handing him the tablet. Palladium and rare earth metals are following the same trend. Allen nodded, studying the graphs and numbers. And Council currencies. Rodriguez smiled tightly. In freefall against the Earth credit, just as we predicted. Allen stood and walked to the window. Mars had always been the backbone of human industry, but now it would become something more, the foundation of human independence. Have we secured all the contracts with the outer colonies? He asked. Yes, Rodriguez confirmed. Every human settlement has agreed to the new supply arrangement. We're completely self-sufficient now. The plan had been years in the making. While the diplomats talked peace, business leaders like Allen had prepared for the possibility of separation. New supply chains had been established. Alternative sources for critical materials had been developed. Production capacity had been expanded. What about the military contracts? Allen asked. Fulfilled ahead of schedule, Rodriguez replied. The new fleet will be fully equipped within the month. Allen nodded with satisfaction. Then we've done our part. On dozens of Council worlds, factory production lines began to halt as human raw materials ceased to arrive. Critical components for everything from starship drives to medical equipment became unobtainable almost overnight. In the Medusan homeworld's capital city, factory manager Kelvor stared at the empty loading bay, where human transport ships usually docked. When will the next shipment arrive? He asked his logistics officer. It won't, came the reply. All human transports have returned to their territory. No new shipments have been scheduled. That's impossible, Kelvor insisted. We have contracts. We have agreements. Contracts that are now worthless, the logistics officer said grimly. Without their raw materials, production will stop in 3 days. Similar scenes played out across Council space. Factories closed. Workers were sent home. Finished products remained undelivered due to lack of components. In the Council's financial center, analysts worked through the night, producing increasingly alarming projections. The galactic credit, stable for centuries, began a precipitous decline against human currency. Financial Director Nevillar of the Celteri Banking Collective called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Financial Authority. This cannot continue, he told the assembled financial leaders. If the human withdrawal extends beyond 2 weeks, we face the worst economic crisis in Council history. Surely they will return, an Ardani banker suggested. They need our markets. Do they? Nevillar asked. Our latest analysis suggests the humans have been preparing for this separation for years. Their economy is designed to function independently. On Earth, Commerce Secretary Lisa Owen presented the latest economic data to President Harry Chen. Every economic indicator is positive, Owen reported. Our markets have fully absorbed the shock of withdrawal. In fact, many sectors are seeing unprecedented growth. President Chen nodded. And the Council economies? Contracting rapidly, Owen replied, especially in high-tech industries dependent on our raw materials. The galactic credit has fallen 20% against ours in just 5 days. How long until they're forced back to the negotiating table? Chen asked. Owen considered the question carefully. At the current rate of decline, 2 weeks, maybe less for some species. President Chen turned to look at the large map of human space displayed on her office wall. What had once seemed small compared to the vast council territories now represented humanity's greatest strength, their independence. "When they come back," she said, "we'll be setting the terms." Fleet Admiral Nicol Jordan reviewed the holographic display showing the positioning of Earth's defensive fleets. The massive withdrawal operation had been executed flawlessly, with all human assets now secured behind the newly established defensive perimeter. The command center hummed with activity as officers monitored the movements of council ships near the border. So far, there had been no aggressive actions, just increased patrols and surveillance. "Status report," Jordan ordered. Commander Daniel Taylor approached with a datapad. "All civilian ships have completed withdrawal from council space. The last research outpost in the Proxima sector has gone dark. We're at 100% recall." Jordan nodded, pleased with the efficiency of the operation. What had seemed like an impossible task just months ago had been accomplished without a single casualty. "And our defensive line?" "Fully established," Taylor confirmed. 5 fleet groups positioned at strategic points along the border. Early warning systems active. The new automated defense platforms are operational. The holographic display shifted to show the network of defense platforms that now formed an invisible barrier between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Each platform was equipped with advanced weapons systems and sensor arrays, creating a defensive wall that would be difficult for any fleet to penetrate. "The Taurian delegation is requesting safe passage to Earth," Taylor reported. "Their military attaché wishes to discuss mutual security concerns." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "The Taurians are breaking ranks already." "Interesting." The Taurians were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. If they were seeking separate talks, it suggested the Council's united front was already crumbling. "Should I grant their request?" Taylor asked. Jordan considered for a moment. "Yes, but with a limited escort. I want to show them something." "Show them what?" "Admiral." Jordan smiled slightly. "The truth." Meanwhile, in the Council Military Command Center, an emergency session had been convened. Defense Minister Grelnas of the Saltari Imperium stood before the assembled military leaders, his silver skin reflecting the harsh lighting. "Our intelligence was wrong," he admitted reluctantly. "Completely wrong." The chamber fell silent. The Saltari rarely admitted error. "Explain," demanded the Ardani fleet commander. Grelnas activated a holographic display showing the human border. "We've detected unusual energy signatures throughout human space. Our probes identified massive shipyards that were not on any of our charts." The display zoomed in to show orbital facilities around several planets and moons in human territory. "Hidden shipyards?" asked the Medusan admiral. "How many?" 23, Grelnas replied grimly, "producing warships at an astonishing rate. Our previous estimates of human military capability were off by a factor of 3. The Council military leaders exchanged worried glances. "And their technological development has not been static as we believed," Grelnas continued. "These new vessels show energy readings consistent with advanced propulsion and weapon systems." "How advanced?" the Taurian representative asked quietly. "Comparable to our own," Grelnas admitted. "In some cases, possibly superior." The Medusan admiral slammed his tentacle against the table. "Impossible. They are primitives. Primitives who have been deceiving us," the Taurian replied calmly. "While showing us obsolete technology, they were developing new systems in secret." Back in Earth space, the Taurian delegation's ship approached the human defensive perimeter under escort. From the bridge of his vessel, Taurian military attaché Krell observed the human defenses with his 4 eyes. "Impressive," he noted to his aide. "Far more extensive than our intelligence suggested." The human escort vessel hailed them. "Taurian delegation, we've been instructed to give you a tour of our outer defensive systems before proceeding to Earth. Admiral Jordan believes it may help inform your discussions." Krell's eyes blinked in the Taurian expression of surprise. "They want to show us their defenses. Willingly? It could be a deception, his aide suggested. False displays to intimidate us. Perhaps, Krell mused. Or perhaps they are confident enough that it doesn't matter what we see. As their ship moved deeper into human space, Krell observed the massive defense platforms, the patrol ships, and finally, in orbit around Mars, the shipyards. Dozens of warships under construction, each larger and more formidable than anything the Council had believed the humans capable of building. Send a message to the Council, Krell ordered his aide. Tell them we were wrong. Tell them we need to reconsider our approach to the humans. They won't believe it, his aide warned. Former Ambassador Diane Ellis had just settled into her new office at the Defense Ministry when her assistant, Andrew Parker, knocked on the door. Ellis looked up from the stack of reports she had been reviewing. Her new title of Special Advisor to the President came with a mountain of paperwork. Yes, Andrew, she asked. There's an unexpected visitor, Parker said, clearly surprised. The Ardani ambassador is requesting an unofficial meeting. Ellis set down her datapad. This was happening sooner than she had expected. The economic pressure must be hitting harder than their models predicted. Show them in, she said calmly, but record everything. Parker nodded and left. A moment later, he returned with the tall, willowy alien. The Ardani had pale blue skin and moved with a natural grace that humans often found mesmerizing. This particular Ardani, Ambassador Thelmar, had been one of the more reasonable voices in the council chambers. Ambassador Thelmar, Ellis greeted, rising from her seat. This is unexpected. The Ardani bowed slightly. Former Ambassador Ellis, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Ellis gestured to a chair. Please sit. What brings you to Earth? The last I heard, all official communication between humans and the Council had been suspended. The Ardani settled into the chair, folding long limbs carefully. This is not an official Council visit. I am here on behalf of the Ardani Confederation only. Ellis raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She waited patiently. My government wishes to express regret over the Council's inflexibility. The alien began carefully. We believe the negotiations took an unfortunate turn. That's one way to put it, Ellis replied. Demanding our complete disarmament while offering no real protection was more than unfortunate. It was insulting. The Ardani's skin shifted color slightly, a sign of embarrassment. Yes, that is why I am here. Perhaps separate negotiations, outside council oversight. Ellis leaned back in her chair. Are you suggesting the Ardani Confederation would break with the council position? If necessary, the ambassador admitted. Our economy cannot sustain a prolonged separation from human markets. Already, 3 of our major manufacturing centers have closed due to lack of materials. Across human space, similar approaches were occurring. On Mars, the Taurian military attaché Krell met with Defense Minister Jack Wilson. On Alpha Centauri, Medusan trade representatives arrived to speak with Colonial Governor Susan Martinez. On the space station Arcturus, Bolian financial executives sought meetings with human banking officials. The pattern was clear: bilateral offers from individual council species, each seeking to secure their own interests as the United Council position crumbled. In the Oval Office of the White House, President Laura Harrison met with her senior advisors. The large conference table was surrounded by the leaders of Earth's government, all focused on the latest developments. 6 separate species have requested individual negotiations, reported Secretary of State Victor Lee. All of them were among the more moderate voices in the Council. And the Xeltari? President Harrison asked. Still maintaining the hard line, Lee replied. But they're increasingly isolated. Their economy is in free fall. Their military allies are abandoning them one by one. Commerce Secretary Lisa Owen added, our economic projections suggest they can't hold out more than another 2 weeks. Their industrial base depends too heavily on human resources. President Harrison nodded and turned to Ellis. What's your assessment, Diane? Ellis considered carefully before answering. They're desperate, but trying not to show it. Each species is looking out for its own interests now. The Council's united front is breaking apart exactly as we predicted. And your recommendation? Consider individual treaties, but only with those who recognize our sovereignty and right to self-defense, Ellis suggested. Make it clear that any future relationship must be based on mutual respect and equal standing. President Harrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the White House gardens. The weight of her decision would affect humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Very well, she decided. We will address the Earth Senate this afternoon. We will consider individual treaties, but only with those who recognize our sovereignty and right to self-defense. She turned back to face her advisors. The days of human submission are over. From now on, we negotiate as equals. Nothing less will be acceptable. Throughout the room, heads nodded in agreement. The gamble they had taken in walking away from the Council was paying off better than anyone had dared to hope. 6 months after the human withdrawal, the Galactic Council chamber was notably emptier. Where once 27 species had gathered to discuss galactic affairs, now only 19 remained. The others had signed separate treaties with humanity, withdrawing from the Council in the process. High Counselor Zeth Toril gazed around the chamber, remembering how full it had been before the crisis began. Now, entire sections sat vacant, a visible reminder of how badly they had misjudged the situation. We will now discuss the latest human proposal, Zeth Toril announced to the remaining delegates. He read from the document before him. Official recognition of the United Earth Federation as a sovereign power. Retraction of all disarmament demands. Establishment of fair trade agreements based on mutual benefit. Military non-interference pact. Reparations for economic sanctions imposed during previous negotiations. The chamber remained silent. 6 months ago, such terms would have been met with outrage and dismissal. Now, the delegates simply looked tired and defeated. We have little choice, the Celtari ambassador admitted, his once proud voice now humbled. His species had suffered the most from the human withdrawal. 3 of their colony worlds faced famine due to supply chain collapses. Their economy had shrunk by 30%. Our civilization faces economic collapse if this continues, he added. The humans control too many essential resources. On Earth, Admiral William Carter and now Secretary of State Diane Ellis reviewed the Council's response in the White House Situation Room. President Laura Harrison sat at the head of the table, listening carefully. They've accepted our terms, Ellis noted, looking up from her datapad. All of them, without modification. Carter nodded, unsurprised. Their economy can't sustain continued isolation from human space. They held out longer than I expected, honestly. President Harrison studied the holographic display showing the new political reality of the galaxy. Where once the Council had dominated, now a new alliance centered around humanity stood as an equal power. 8 former Council species had joined with Earth to form the Turan Cooperative, a new political entity based on principles of sovereignty and mutual respect. Shall we accept their surrender? Harrison asked. Ellis shook her head. Not surrender, Madam President. A new beginning. A more equal relationship. Then we will negotiate from strength this time, Carter added. No more concessions. No more accepting less than we deserve. President Harrison nodded. Prepare a delegation to return to Council space. But make sure they understand. Things will be different now. 2 weeks later, a fleet of human ships prepared to depart Earth orbit. Unlike the single vessel that had left Council space 6 months earlier, this was a show of strength. 5 warships escorting the diplomatic vessel. Captain Jason Monroe stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, watching as the diplomatic shuttle docked with his ship. Ambassador Martin Wells, the newly appointed head of the human delegation, would travel aboard the Valiant to the Council homeworld. Quite different from last time, Lieutenant Olivia Murphy observed from her station. Monroe nodded. Last time we were leaving with our tails between our legs. This time we return as equals. Or perhaps more than equals, Murphy suggested. When the Valiant and its escort fleet arrived at the Council homeworld, they were met by a reception far different from the one 6 months prior. An honor guard of ships from multiple species escorted them to the docking station. Council representatives waited to greet them with formal ceremony. In the Grand Council chamber, now with 8 empty sections representing the species that had joined the Terran Cooperative, Ambassador Wells presented the human position. "We come not as supplicants, but as partners," he told the assembled delegates, "not as a minor power to be controlled, but as a sovereign nation to be respected." High Counselor Zeth Toril nodded in acceptance. "The galaxy has been irreversibly transformed by your actions, Ambassador Wells. We have learned a difficult but necessary lesson." "And what lesson is that?" Wells asked. "That true strength lies not always in weapons or fleets," Zeth Toril replied, "but in the courage to walk away from a bad deal. In the resolve to stand alone if necessary. We underestimated humanity in every possible way." As human ships prepared to resume trade with Council worlds, the new reality settled across the galaxy. Not through war or conquest, but through determination and unity, humanity had risen from a minor power to one of the dominant forces in galactic politics. The simple act of walking away had changed everything.